All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. We're back today for our monthly live webcast, today focused on cross-functional partnering to deliver success. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training, with more than 5,000 graduates globally. Our popular virtual boot camps run monthly. We offer a 12-week coaching cohort 3 times a year, with our final cohorts of 2021 beginning in September. We have an accredited online learning CSM certification program and a number of standalone courses, all taught by industry experts. We've still got space in our level 1 and level 2 public boot camps in August. If you're interested in saving $300, please raise your hand or send a chat message to the Success Coaching Coaches user on chat, and Ashley will send you the coupon code. For those listening in on LinkedIn Live, drop me a direct message and I'll send it over to you as well. You can find out more about our training programs at successcoaching.co. Now, for those of you that are new to this series, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. This right here is the only script that we've developed. Everything else is a free-flowing exchange of information, ideas, stories, examples, and best practices. And we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to the broader customer success community, you. So I encourage all of you to suggest topics or panelists for these learning events. And I'm also always looking for people to join me one-to-one on my Moments of Truth podcast. So if you've got ideas or you got something to say, reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and drop me a note. The schedule for our upcoming events can also be found at successcoaching.co. There's an events tab at the top. Just click on that and you'll find out everything that you wanted to find out about our events. As usual, we will post a replay of this webinar along with the transcription on our website early next week. Now, there's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. The Mastermind series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those out in the wild practicing customer success daily. And to do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. This learning event is for you, and we will be taking questions. So get ready to use that Q&A functionality at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask or upvote a question. Also, please remember to use the chat for commentary, not questions. Now, without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do. And let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Gala.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Gala. It's pronounced like Lady Gaga with an L. And I am in Raleigh, North Carolina. So shout out in the chat if anyone's on this East Coast side of the world. And I am a CSM for a company called Gym Launch. So we are an organization that helps gym owners turn their passion into a profitable business for them and their families. And in a previous life, I worked in hospitality. So I graduated with a degree in resort and hospitality management and started my career working at MGM Resorts International in Las Vegas, and then spent the last several years working at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, before transitioning to customer success.
Working for the mouse, as you said.
Yes, working for the mouse.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that everyone in Orlando says and gets. Yeah. So if you're in Orlando, you're probably like, yes, I know.
Yeah, it'd be weird if you like pick up the phone and get a call. Hello, Gala. Right? Yeah. All right.
I cannot do a Mickey Mouse impression.
Yeah, that was I butchered that one. All right. Thanks, Gala. Vanessa, you're up.
Great. Hi, everyone. Vanessa Gatihi. I'm joining in from San Francisco today. So I currently am a manager of scale customer success at Slack for the West Coast. Started my career in kind of the B2B, well, in B2B software, but this was on-prem software, doing professional services work. So kind of the, traditional statements of work, delivering software for customers on premise. From that, I went into customer success when it was really, really young. And I think we were all just figuring it out. I reported into a sales leader and kind of was just in charge of like, keep the customers renewing, like go figure out what you need to do that. So I've learned a lot over the years from people like Andrew and a lot of the thought leaders at Gainsight about customer success. Have been at some really interesting smaller companies. And then about 3 years ago, joined Slack as a more kind of senior-ish IC. Was an IC there for about 2 years. And again, a couple months ago, I've taken over managing this team. So super excited to be here and offer some thoughts on this topic along with these ladies.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. And thanks again for helping us out again this week. You're my guest last week on the CSLR. So it's great to see you again, of course. And finally, Wendy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Wendy, and I am a senior customer success manager at Smartsheet. I work with some of our largest customers to make sure that they are prepared to capture, manage, automate, and report out on work. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 young children, and I'm also a fashion consultant. And I literally take my customer success practices from my software world and I apply it to my fashion world. And just to give you a shout out on success coaching, I've taken some of the courses and I made sure I did it when I landed my first CSM position. And I was able to stand out immediately based on the practical things that they taught me. So definitely take a look.
Excellent. Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate the shout out. Yeah, we've known you for many years. You were one of the early students to our original program. So definitely appreciate that. And I'm glad that it played a positive impact on your customer success career. That's really important to us. So excellent. Once again, we all appreciate your time today. So now let's get to the topic. I think we can all agree that customer success is a team sport. And in order for a team to win, every member of that team must do their part. And it's always frustrating to hear stories, and I hear them too often, of team members not doing their part. The majority of the time I found that there is no malicious intent. It's just a lack of knowledge and understanding, whether it's about the product, the process, the people, the responsibilities. There's a gap there, and a lack of knowledge and understanding is something that can be easily fixed through communication and effective cross-team collaboration and building those relationships that we need to have with others, just like we do with our customers, right? So how do you all effectively partner and work with other team members that you depend on in your quest for customer success?
Yeah, Andrew, if I can step in there, I think that the foundation of effective cross collaboration is really thinking about what's in it for them, meaning the other departments. So when you say as a CSM, like you're the intermediary between the customer and the team in any organization, that is truly what a CSM is doing. So, but the CSM can't work on their own. We cannot accomplish anything that we do as a party of one, even though we might be a party of one. So I like to think of things as what's in it for them, for all of the other departments, just like we think about that in terms of the customer, right? You're saying what's in it for them? How am I going to provide value to the customer? Doing that internally as well is super important. So what's in it for product when I make this change? What's in it for, sales when I do the insert X, Y, and Z? And then after you've done that, actually going to them and saying, is this really what's in it for you? How do I get your buy-in so that what I'm saying and doing and trying to accomplish on behalf of the customer works for you is really the foundation, I believe.
100%. Whenever someone describes their role, they typically put themselves at the center, like the hub of a bicycle wheel, and all the other teams are spokes, right? So if I'm doing that as the CSM, that product VP is doing it, from his point of view, right? So if I could cast okay, if product is at the center and all of these other teams are spokes, who is he serving, and what's in his remit that he's responsible for? That's cracking the code to begin the conversation.
Well, that's the first step in empathizing, right? Understanding their perspective. I'm going to think about what's in it for them. I want to think about their perspective so that I can I can make my ask. I can present my idea. I can get them to understand why their involvement is important from their perspective. So the narrative that I am going to paint this picture around is in a format that will resonate with them.
Yeah, and to that point, just to go even further, right? So like using the language and the frameworks that they think of. So if I'm talking with an AE about something and I need their help with something, it's like, oh, I know it's your end of quarter, right? But like, can you do X, Y, Z? So really showing them and using their language and their time frame so that they know that you are empathizing with them. Or, hey, product, I know you have to deliver your roadmap in the next 2 weeks, but can you help me with this? So thinking about what metrics are important to them. What are they getting comped on? Is it the number of releases they're doing? Is it the ACV or the new revenue they're bringing in, and the timelines that are important to them? I think when you use that in your asks in your language, you're really showing that you're a partner with them. And you just get a lot more credibility and buy-in to work with you.
Yeah, because leading, like you said, Andrew, leading with empathy, it's not just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, it's using that information to guide your decisions. So there's an action that is required after the leading with empathy to be able to get that cross collaboration and buy-in.
Yeah. And Gallo, I liked what you said about asking if you got it right. Yes. We can think about, let's try another one, maybe the marketing lead. Like we can think about what he or she is responsible for, and I don't know, don't spend an hour on it, spend 5 minutes on it, maybe, like really focus, and then check in. I mean, who's not going to feel good about checking in? Like, hey, Gala, I think this is what you're really focused on and important. Did I get it right? They're going to love it.
Absolutely. Well, but I think it's, yeah. And this all, I agree with all of this, but we also need to be thinking about this, not as, how do I frame this when I have an ask, when I have a particular need that I need fulfilled? It's, we talk about, effective customer success management involves you establishing a relationship with your customer, right? It involves you understanding their perspective, applying empathy, so that you can connect with them. And I think we need to follow that. I don't even think that you need to follow that same approach when you're dealing with all of these other people in the organization. So it's not, here's how I'm going to approach it for this particular activity. This is also a relationship building exercise.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, like relationships are, like you said, we focus so heavily on the relationships with our clients, but you can't accomplish those until you've worked on the insides first. You've got to work on the internal guts before you work on the outside ones. So I think it's super important to think of your relationships internally as bank accounts. So you're constantly making those deposits and those withdrawals from those relationships. Hopefully your deposits will outweigh the withdrawals. I can, a perfect example that I can give, a real tangible one, about a year ago, there was something that came up out of nowhere from a feature that didn't roll out the way that we thought it was going to. And it was 9:00 at night, and it was going to affect a certain amount of end users. And I was one person. So working on that would have taken me 4 hours, but I reached out to another team and I said, can you help me with this? And immediately they said yes, and it shrunk it to an hour. But I only think that it went like that because my deposits outweighed that withdrawal. And it was a huge withdrawal from me asking them that. But on the flip side, when they did that, they deposited it massively into my bank account. So it's a two-way street, and it's something that you have to do often with intention.
Did you hesitate? Did you hesitate to ask for help at any point, or you just knew?
So I hesitated only because it was 9:00 at night. But I knew that, the team that we had in place, I was confident that the deposits that I had made in those relationships were going to come through no matter what time it was, so my hesitation was only waking people up. It wasn't about the relationship.
So just a reminder for everybody, Q&A at the bottom of the screen. If you're listening on LinkedIn, if you're watching us on LinkedIn Live, you can post questions under the stream. We have somebody that's monitoring that, and they will go ahead and transfer that into the Q&A. So back to that. So I understand the ledger, right? You got the ledger, you got the deposits, the bank account, but what best practices did you follow, or do you recommend for those that are listening for connecting with these internal partners? What have you done, to bridge that connection and then maintain that connection. I think it's really important we go down that path.
I can maybe take this one.
Sure.
So, I think the best examples I think in my mind are coming from working with product. I think as a CSM, right, we need to have such a great relationship with product. And to Gala's point, it needs to be a two-way street. We're not always asking things of them, new features, give us a date when this is going to be launched, right? I think in a lot of CSMs, maybe younger, and I was one of these, I'm like, give me, but really making it an effective two-way relationship, I think is the best with product. And so using Gala's metaphor of deposits, some of the big deposits, some of the ways you can make connections are actually big gives. So like, a PM is working on a new feature and that one of your customers has been talking about this. So reach out and say, hey, if you ever wanted to talk to a customer who's been thinking about this, I'm happy to set up a call for you. I'm happy to have them review their mocks for you. So just being super proactive and giving those bigger asks, something that's going to help, this XYZ PM accomplish their goal. That's a huge deposit you're making and you are proactive about it. I think deposits also can be super small. Like one of my favorite ways to engage with PMs or product marketing managers, PMMs that I work with a lot as well is, hey, they do trainings for us all the time. Shoot them a DM in Slack and say, that was a great presentation. I love how you added that XYZ thing. It's super small. It takes you 30 seconds to just shoot someone a note that this training was great or this example was great. But it just shows them that you appreciate their work. And that's how you start to build connection and friendship over time. So just wanted to give that example of a big deposit and a small deposit you can quickly make.
Yeah, it's so fun too, right? To provide that feedback and appreciation. To build on what Vanessa said, I definitely give thanks and appreciation, but then I do a kudos email to their manager and I BCC them. And I said, okay, this is what they did. I give very specific things of what they did for me and the outcomes. And then it kind of lays that groundwork of additional partnership, even at the higher level. And it feels good to do that.
Yes. I love that. Make sure their manager hears it, right?
Yeah.
And some of the best practices that I've put into place that I do often and with intention is just going out of my way every week to connect with someone else on another team and praise them publicly for, for example, an internal value that you might have. Every company has like their core tenets or their internal values and recognizing people from that. But that is a specific block of time on my calendar every single week where I call it cross-pollination, where I purposely cross-pollinate with other teams, whether it's, did you learn that someone in the finance department called out sick? Are you setting a calendar reminder for yourself to check in with them the following day and ask them how they're feeling? It's those little tiny things that are going to differentiate you from the person next to you, because when that person gets that Slack message saying, how are you feeling? And I don't even work with you, you have to imagine that that's going to make them feel incredible. So like Vanessa's examples were great, but I really like what she said about the small deposits. I genuinely think that they might be small monetarily, but over time, it's compounding interest. Let's just keep rolling with the bank situation.
I think what the small deposits do for you though, is more than anything, they really create that connection with the individual. I love you and I have talked about this before. I've loved how you have that notepad and you're constantly taking notes and and when somebody mentions their dog or their kids or their spouse, you're writing stuff down, which is something which is a great practice, which you should do with your customers as well. But just keeping that mental note and writing that down and putting it away so that you've got some good G2 on people, right? And you can talk to them about things that they care about. Because at the end of the day, what's in it for me is not just a customer adoption strategy. It is a way to connect with people.
Exactly. It's like if someone asks me about my dog Tobias, I immediately melt. I'll do anything for you. Like if they remembered that that's the love of my life, like those types of things, people talk about what's important to them. So just finding little ways to make note of those, just like you would for a customer. You put it in the CRM every time you talk to them about something. Why not do it internally as well? And, I use paper and pen. I'm sure there are better ways.
Yeah.
JC has a really good question. I'll tee it up for the team. Empathy and good communications are definitely important. What about the ground level definitions about discipline and clarity? for example, having RACI?
Yeah, so we actually have a tool that we developed called the Customer Success Engagement Blueprint, which is is an exploded RACI. It's definitely much more complicated RACI, but it's built to show everybody internally as well as the customer. Here are all the things that we do in the customer experience. Who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed, and it was built in a Google sheet originally because one of the key things you could do with that was the collaboration. So it was it's built to be shared. Mm-hmm. And when we used to do a lot of consulting, we would use this tool and we would go into these sessions. We'd do these boardroom sessions with representatives across the entire company when we were talking about customer experience and customer journey and customer success, and get all these people together and walk through, okay, what is it you're trying to achieve and who's responsible for what? And it constantly amazed me that these people, in one case, they literally sat in the same room. It was small startup, 65 people in a giant room with a bunch of tables, that were sharing things, sharing space, sharing air with each other. No cubes or anything. They're looking at each other every day, and people literally didn't know what the other people were doing who sat right next to them.
Mm-hmm. One of the examples, I think, is a CSM, and as you get more senior, or just depending on the type of technology your company is rolling out, a lot of times I think where the RACI and where things can get a little wait, who's responsible, who's accountable is with professional services, right? So you as a CSM, this is my customer, I own the relationship. But if there's a pro serve team and there's like a delivery manager or someone who's in charge of implementing, I think that's where it can get a little bit blurry. One of my biggest things that I recommend to all CSMs, at Slack and other places is there's always going to be RACI, but there's always going to be a little bit of mixover. So how do you define what you're going to do when there is a little bit of that blurriness? So not only establishing the RACI, but like what happens if we're unsure of where this falls? So I love to have coffee chats in the beginning with all the people on my pro serve team to say, hey, if this bleeds over, do you want me to DM you? Do we want to do this in a public Slack channel? How do you prefer we sort this out? And so I think setting those ground rules of how are we going to interact if one of us feels a blurriness or if one of us feels that we might be stepping on each other's toes, I think it's also just really, really important to do. So anyway, it's just something that I wanted to offer for that example.
That's awesome. It reminded me of forming, storming, norming, performing. And inevitably in any kind of partnership, there's going to be a storm. I mean, okay, maybe not. But I'm sure someone could find an exception. But what you do to get past the storm and strengthen the partnership is super important. So for instance, like Vanessa, let's just say, we were working together and I used a different mode of communication that doesn't work for you. And I'm like, why doesn't Vanessa respond? Like, she's like, does she hate me? Like, whatever it is. But we check in because that's something we talked about before. Like, hey, I noticed this. And then this was the effect, like, help me understand. That's a tip that I got from Nils Venya, a CS thought leader. What happened?
Our buddy Nils.
Yeah. This is what I noticed. This is what the outcome was. Help me understand. And it creates a really nice platform to discuss a situation without bad vibes.
And there needs to be more of that. I mean, there needs to be more discussion in general, right? People need to talk to each other, not talk at each other. Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, Wendy, when we were doing our prep call, you mentioned we were talking about different tools, right? So we had some best practices. I love those ideas. But what about some tools? And you talked about this tool, SciPab or something.
Yeah, this one I learned at a previous company, and I use it in various roles because it's super easy to remember and effective. It's from Mandel, a company. You can Google it, Mandel.
Oh, not Howie Mandel.
No,
okay. I was thinking, oh, wow, Howie Mandel.
We could probably riff on that for an hour.
Yeah,
No,
we probably
hit
could.
the red buzzer. We're gonna hit the red buzzer.
Yeah. It's called SIPAB, and it stands for SCIPAB. Situation, complication, implication, position, action, and benefit. Just Google it, you'll get a lot of information. But basically what it does is it frames up in a very concise way something that happened where you need to enroll another party. Escalations really, it's great for escalations. I used it several times in previous roles. And I can help that person understand where they're going to play a part in the action and then the benefit. And as opposed to explaining, re-explaining. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'd love to see some reactions either on the chat or Q&A to that concept, because if we can communicate concisely, we have a lot of power.
Yeah, I love the concept of laying out, here's where things are at. This is what happens if we do something or we don't do something. And, I'm asking you to be involved in addressing this, and you will be part of the solution, right? And so you're spinning it as, I'm enlisting your help, not to do something for me or to solve a problem for me, but to create a positive outcome. And that's going to look good for you as well as the the broader organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you ever been in a situation where you're having a hard time conveying or reinforcing the buy-in with in the buy-in to customer success, with other departments? Yeah, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's product, maybe it's marketing doesn't want to give you cycles to coordinate communication so our customers don't get overloaded with content, or product doesn't want to listen to the feedback so that we can close the loop and we can really move closer to what our customers are looking for. Or sales is making promises and saying things that just aren't realistic. So how do you communicate and then reinforce that buy-in?
Yeah, I think that comes from environments where those relationships have not been established, because just like you have executive champions or whatever your organization calls them within your clients' companies, you have to have executive champions and champions of each department that relate to customer success. And so, something that I do internally is host a meeting with the executive champion of all those other departments as it relates to customer success. So it is a customer success focused meeting, but it has sales, it has product, it has all of those other teams for the person who's representing my department within theirs. And so to your question, Andrew, those types of environments, I think, only happen when you're not intentionally trying to involve yourself in the relationships of other departments around you.
And I also think, how do we get good executive sponsors? How do we get champions in our customers? We show value, right? We demonstrate how are we adding to them and to their metrics and to what their business is trying to do it. So internally, we need to do the same. How am I showing marketing that I'm actually going to help them with getting them more customer marketing stories on our blog or speakers for our conferences? How am I showing sales that I'm helping drive their revenue targets by, having thriving customers and second order revenue coming in? So I think I completely agree. We need those sponsors internally, and we build those by demonstrating the value that we're going to add to them if they come to the partnership with us. And so again, you do that over time, you build credibility, but that's just kind of the framework to look at it as.
Yeah, I love that, because they might not necessarily understand our role as customer success to the degree that we do. In fact, they won't, just like we won't understand their role to the degree that they do. And explaining what I do and why I do it and how I think it could add value is a great first step. And I think what Andrew, you were kind of poking at was, maybe you have to reiterate that. Maybe it changes and evolves, like how your role can benefit as we get progress in our career. Because as we're become more senior, we have more access to customer executive levels to match with our perhaps C-level. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Well, and I think we need to, I think we need to, everybody needs to realize that customer success needs to make the first move. You can't walk into this expecting that, right? You can't even if we all sit here and go, well, no, duh, we have to do it this way. Don't expect that sales, marketing, product are thinking the way you're thinking. And given the fact that you're in a customer success role, you have the empathy, you have the EQ, you are going to be the one that's going to have to make that first move.
I like it.
And so, and you need to educate these folks. You need to, so there is effort on our part. And quite frankly, we're the best people to do it anyways.
Yeah. And when you bring on someone new to your team, so if you manage a team of people, it starts there. That first step of their onboarding experience needs to be cross-pollinating with those other departments through meet and greet, so that when Gala reaches out to Wendy and asks a big ask, and they're like, who's this Gala person? We've already established a relationship. Even though it might be superficial to start, there is that buy-in that I'm coming in and I'm a subject matter expert. But it only, like, we're talking about something in different ways, but it all can be, the Cliff Notes version of this is that you have to build those relationships.
Yes, that's key. This is not something where you just flip a switch, or my boss said, you got to answer this question. I mean, yeah, you might get the question answered, but that's not a way to build a relationship.
Yeah,
that's not a way to establish a connection, right?
Yeah, you plant a seed and you have to water it, and it can be years that it takes to really create an incredible relationship with someone. Or it can just be when I pick up the phone at 9 o'clock at night and you help me out and I didn't have to do something for 4 hours. It only took one. That person has the buy-in from me for the rest of my life.
It all depends on how much cash you have in the bank, right?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
And just one other thing I'll say on this, as we, and again, we've all been in orgs, small or large, where you're still proving out your value of customer success, like data helps. Right? So if there's a ton of bugs and like you feel like the engineering leadership or someone isn't taking this seriously, run a report showing all of the churn that's come from product issues, right? Are you as a CS team and leadership like really booking those churn reasons so that you're able to make that case? If you feel like you guys have actually kept helping drive new sales and add-ons, like run a report of all the opportunities that were coming from current customers and show your sales leadership. So I think there's a way that data can really help, especially when data is tied to revenue. And so again, lean into that. And even us as ICs, you have access to a lot of these Salesforce reports, right? You have access to doing reports on opportunities and churn and things like that. So take some leadership even to your manager and show them that you pulled this report. What does he or she think about it? Should we show this to our partners? So I think each of us can take initiative in this space as well.
Well, run a report and tell a story, right? Don't just run the report and say, look at the data. Say, run a report, do an assessment, do an initial assessment, and tell a story about what you see in the data. You have to lead people, could be your own management, but you have to lead people down a path.
I love that so much. I had a previous executive mentor and I said, hey, how do you get people to do something? It was like, or transformation, like that concept. He says, it's your heart, your head, and then the path. So start with the heart. And we've kind of all talked about that with laying the groundwork for the relationship, caring about Tobias and, and like some personal aspects and having those nuggets, but also like, show them the appeal to their analytical side. And that's what Vanessa's saying about data.
Yeah.
They'll have that balance. And then how are we going to get from A to B?
Right.
If you can explain that in that very simple framework, people are going to follow your lead.
Yeah.
And this is why customer success is so beautiful, is because you have to be genuine in order to do these things that we're talking about, right? It's not for everyone, but when I genuinely care to see if you're sick the next day still, or if you just need a pick me up, that's the difference between good to great, honestly, when it comes to customer success, is you're doing the same thing for your customers. So doing it internally, it will plant those seeds over time so that you can make that massive withdrawal, which will happen. Everyone, it's going to happen one day.
You're going to need it. You're going to need some help, and it's going to happen. So set yourself up.
One other thing I just want to say, I love that path piece, Wendy. I love that, because you're right. Think about for our customers, right? We're on an EBR. we show them the data, right? Like, oh, you guys could really be moving the needle here on this adoption, right? Here's my recommendation based on the data. You're not doing good in this area. And look, we have some resources, or we have some templates, or we have some examples of now how you can do this, right? That's what gets the customer to act, right? You use data, you show them what they need to do, and you give them resources and templates to make it easier for them to do it. So internally as well, it's very easy to be seen as a complainer, but when you have like, this is what we need you to do, here's the data support, and here's our thoughts on the path forward, right? Like, we're being proactive. I think that's when you're really seen as a partner. And so again, internally, externally, I love that path forward. So that was great, Wendy.
Thanks.
Well, I always used to coach my direct reports. I'd say, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. Right? If you've identified a problem, great. I'm glad you identified the problem. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's talk about the data. But if you're going to show up with that, then you also should be showing up with some ideas on how we can solve it. Right. How we can address it. Don't just throw it in my lap. And it's the same thing with your the collaboration that you're doing with peers and other organizations. Right? I've come to show you this, fix it. No. Yeah. I've come to show you this. Here's what I get out of it. How about, what if we did this, this, and this, and begin that, and have that conversation.
I think we have a couple of open questions.
Yeah, we have some more questions. So let's see this. And please feel free to add questions within Zoom. If you're watching on LinkedIn Live, if you post them in LinkedIn Live, we'll get them. They'll be posted here in the Q&A as well. So Dawn asks, and Gala is going to jump in first on this one. Dawn asks, as you are a CSM, are you the only individual that do all communications with the customer, or is anyone from other teams able to communicate with the customer? If anyone is able to communicate with the customer, how do you centralize or keep all parties updated of those conversations? This is always an interesting challenge that I think every company faces. So Gala, what do you got to say for Dawn?
Dawn, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. So that is my slogan, and I'm sticking to it. I don't think that just a CSM should be the only person involved in that customer's path. It is also extremely dependent on the business and the business model. But like Vanessa mentioned, she's got like implementation managers and all of these other roles that might not exist within certain organizations. So in an organization such as my own right now, where I'm not the only person who talks to the customer, I think that there needs to be some type of accountability in regards to how the communication is handled, but it always needs to be in the CRM. If it's not in the CRM, it did not happen. So some best practices around that. I literally block the last 30 minutes of every single day of my day. It's on my calendar, log my calls. Every single call, whether it's Zoom or a phone call, maybe even a message on Facebook that I got from a client, if you use Facebook for your business, that all has to be in the CRM so that the next person can step in and take over that conversation like they were the one who had it themselves. So as long as you're holding your team accountable, that is doable. Another thing that I do, which I took from my hospitality days, is I do mystery shops. So I will pull a random Zoom recording, and I have a list of standards that we've established that are required for those calls. And we shop the call, meaning, did they hit this standard? Did they greet the customer with a smile? Did they use the customer's name at least 3 times? And all of those standards that are set aside. This means nothing if you're not holding everyone accountable to it, though.
Yeah.
One other thing, and of course I do work at Slack, so I have to say this, but this can apply to what other collaboration tool you use. It could be Teams or another one, but really for us, we make sure that we have an account team channel for every customer we have. So customer Acme Corp, there is a Slack channel called, accounts-Acme Corp. The AE is in there. If there's a services, they're in there. I'm in there. As a really important PM upcoming meeting or EVR comes up, we add the PM there, but the PM can be removed from there. So yes, everything is logged in CRM. And luckily at a company like Slack, a lot of our things are auto logged, right? So we use Gong for recording calls and things get auto logged. So we are a little luckier there. But a lot of collaboration is going to happen on like, who's going to own this? Who's going to respond to this? We do that all in Slack. It's all in the channel. And so if I roll off that account, and another CSM gets in that account, they can search, have we ever talked to this customer about XYZ feature? They control F in the Slack channel and they can see all the collaborations. Did it come from the AE? Did it come from the previous CSM? So for us, yes, CRM is king. But a lot of that collaboration of who's going to do what, who's going to respond to this, like we do that all in the Slack channel, and it's there for everyone to see, you know, for years and years to come.
That's awesome.
And it's great that you're tracking that in CRM, Gala. But I think in general, you need to be thinking about, do we have a coordinated communication strategy, and what are we doing to communicate internally what that communication strategy is? So I know that at the beginning of Q3, we're going to be hitting them with this type of general marketing campaign or this type of customer marketing campaign. So, you know, having it in CRM is great as a trailing kind of indicator, but let's also make sure that we know what's coming down the pipe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then also, how does it flow up to the overall account strategy?
Yeah.
So I know the account teams know the account strategy, right? Let's just call it account executive and CSM, maybe the SE. We all know that, but does anybody else in the organization know the strategy for Acme Corp? Maybe they should, right? Because we're going to rely on maybe a set of security features to take that Acme Corp to a higher level in their journey. So that's our linchpin in what I do, but the vehicle to communicate and stay true to the strategy, you need that, like something like Slack. Totally agree.
Yeah, the Slack idea is interesting. I had one client who used Slack though, and they didn't practice good Slack hygiene, and it became, it was a mess, right? So, well, you know, if you want to use a technology, just the technology isn't the silver bullet. It's how you implement it. It's how you leverage it. So. And
all of us CSMs should be experts in change management, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
Provision, who's the executive sponsor?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to practice internally what we preach externally.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the cobbler shoes are never fixed, are they? All right. So, thank you for that. Who was that? Was from Dawn. Thanks, Dawn.
Yep.
All right. So, next question we got here is from LR. So this is interesting. I don't know if any of you have any experience with this. I definitely have some perspective on this, but in a partner reseller model, most of the time a partner may not have the teams. They may not have teams at the actual vendor. And this may not produce results as a direct CSM would expect. Any suggestions on how to handle this? So this is like, this is all about, your customer success is really more partner success. And I think it's about, what you're trying to do is you're trying to train and enable your partners to deliver success to their customers. Right. And that's the way you need that. We actually have a longtime client that was one of our early team subscribers, and they did this very, they had this very same model. And it was all about how do we impress upon these folks how important it is to drive their customer adoption, for their customers to get the desired outcome. So you're essentially, what you end up doing is you essentially kind of, and I hate using this term these days because it's so outdated, but open up the kimono and help and explain to them, explain to them at the customer experience or customer journey plan level. Here's how things should operate. Here are the tools that we would normally use if you were our direct customer. Use these tools. You're training them. You're essentially training them on how to be customer success managers. Mm-hmm. I don't know if any of you have any additional thoughts on that, or how you would approach that.
One of the things I know that we do at Slack that I can share, and again, I think this could differ at different stages of where your company is at, but over the past, I would say maybe around a year ago, we created our admin certification program for our customers, right? So you're going to run a Slack instance, here's your certification, you study for it, you pass the test. Us as CSMs, we had to also pass that test and do it. And so as we started to bring on third-party professional services consultants to implement, we make them take all these different certifications as
Yep.
well. So you can like reuse the same type of material and certifications that you give your customers to these types of parties to really train them on your technology. But I agree with you. I think if you have an internal onboarding path, can you think about opening that up for your partners as well, so that they're almost getting onboarded like they're a CSM? So you don't want to always have to create a whole bunch of net new materials. Of what can you reuse and repurpose? I think that's maybe just one of the tips I would have.
I like it. I'm stealing it.
One of my former roles, we did a lot of partner. We had a lot of partners that would go out and they would implement solutions on our platform for their customers. Mm-hmm. So it was a reseller like type of situation. And I love that shout out, Vanessa, about certification, getting people certified. Right, that's a piece of it. Right, just like driving adoption, education is a component of driving adoption, but there's still that change management effort. Mm-hmm. You're going to do things differently, right? But that certification is a great way to at least get these folks to a point where you feel confident that they can technically deliver the product. But there's still that other piece, right? Which is the part about teaching them how to be good at being a customer success manager and drive adoption through the change management efforts that they're going to need to undertake. Potentially, even it could get really, depending on what the product is, it could get a little hairy. I mean, you're going to not just want to teach them how to use the product, but you're teaching them how to deliver customer success and how to apply a change management methodology to get their customer to do things differently. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like being a customer success manager on steroids when you're dealing with partners. In that respect, because at the end of the day, and you want to do that, you want to over-index on your partners, right? Because at the end of the day, the customer sees your logo on the screen when stuff doesn't work. They don't necessarily think back to, oh, but it was this partner that implemented it.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I thought you were going to say something about scale, like meaning and overinvest in maybe your partner to deliver because of it's going to help you scale. I think it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's your brand.
Yeah.
It's your product.
Yeah. And you should care about that, and you should be careful about that. And you should, and you should, over-index on training these people. And by the way, you should also just throw this out there. You should not give them that training for free. Right?
That's right. Because
right?
it's valuable.
Do not give them the training for free. They need to buy into it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, they won't take it seriously. Mm-hmm. We end up mitigating the value of our offerings when we do stuff for free. Oh, it's free. It must be cheap. It's free. It must not be worth that much.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for that question, LR, if that is indeed is your name. Let's now get on to the next question from Emily. And it looks like Wendy wants to jump in on this. Emily, when you're invited to a meeting, Emily says, when you're invited to a meeting with your AE to check in with a customer still in the sales process, AE withdrawal, aside from intros and your role in the company, where do you advise bringing the most value to this conversation, making that initial CSM deposit? So so I'm early stage, pre-contract signage. They're introducing customer success, which is, by the way, huge. I love that. Love the fact that you're doing that is great. You're ahead of a lot of other folks out there.
Yeah, you're definitely ahead.
Completely agree. And so I do a couple of things. I like to start with metaphors so that people can really understand my role and how I convey it. So, I use the relay race metaphor, whereby my AE is at the beginning of the race and they have the baton and they're carrying it with you, but they're going to hand it over to Wendy, and she's going to be running this race with the baton with you throughout your journey. So, okay, cool. I know she's a long-term partner. I know she's just not going to be a blink in and out. So that's one thing I do. I also say, like, I really drive home the fact that I am invested in where they want to go and their outcomes. So knowing what they need to accomplish is huge. And I read it back to them, not to hopefully be annoying, but really just kind of make sure I got the point and that they agree that I got it right. So that's just it. I think it makes the customer feel more comfortable because they will be handed off. and you don't want to be handed off to, Jane Doe without any context.
Yeah, and we want that. And by the way, we don't want that race to be. We don't want that race to be, just a couple of batons. We want it to be more of a marathon, right? We want it to be a relay, but we want it to be a marathon level relay. That's not going 800 meters. It's going 26 miles or however long a marathon is.
Yeah,
right?
and at their pace. I mean, we want to push our customers to get to their outcomes quickly, but we can't run ahead of them and drag them on the track.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I think it's super important if you can get engaged. And by the way, it's not for every solution, right? You're not doing this for low cost, low touch situations. But when you're dealing in a higher touch environment, when you're dealing with, maybe low five figures, north of low five figures to upper, where there is going to be some engagement, or maybe mid five figure deals, average deals. I think it's so important to get engaged prior to the contract being sold. It really solidifies, begins to solidify your relationship. You gain that understanding. Like you said, the baton gets very smoothly handed off. The customer expectations, and this is big, customer expectations are set correctly. What we talk about in our training, how important it is that handoff from sales to post sales and that initial onboarding is a moment in the customer journey that it's probably one of the biggest moments of truth. It sets the stage for the rest of the relationship.
Yeah,
right?
And if I can add there, and if my team is on this call, they'll probably know what I'm about to say. But I encourage everyone to not think of it as a handoff and think of it as a handshake. And
I like that.
Handoff implies dumping. Look, Michaela in the chat, she's on my team. She's like, I already know. And I talk about this all the time because handoff implies that you're saying goodbye and you're done with that. Whereas a handshake is a professional, gradual, ongoing relationship. Internally, anyone says handoff, I always am correcting them, handshake. Because when we start to think like that, and we have that mentality, we remove those silos of like sales, customer success. That's a handoff. Whereas if it's a handshake, it's like we are working together towards that common goal. Insert marathon analogy.
Right. Awesome. Love it. No, that's great.
And one other thing on this, I don't know if this is what Emily meant by the question, but just the lens. And I think this is what makes great CSMs and CSMs that can really rise to the ranks. I think a part of this too is when you're internally talking with your AE about what you as a CSM is going to do. So making a deposit in the AE bucket into their leadership. It's like, hey, let's say we only sold to 50% of the organization. There's parts of EMEA that weren't sold to yet. I'm going to make sure that I, as a CSM, am keeping an eye out for those opportunities, Mr. and Mrs. AE, and I'm going to pass them to you the moment I get them. Or, hey, maybe we already sold all we could sell for this company. I'm going to really try to make them a more referenceable customer so that you can go close new sales with this, marketing story or with this webinar that they're going to be on. So, I think for me, that's what I aimed with all of the customers that I had in my book was how do I really show up as a partner to the AE org and identify new revenue opportunities? Or if they're already sold, how do I make them a second order revenue customer? And I think that's what makes really great CSMs is ones that help really partner with AEs to drive new business, not just kind of deliver on what was sold. So just want to offer that as well.
Yeah, well, that's important. Your sales team, you're thinking perspective, right? Sales team is coin operated. And I don't say that in a negative way, that we want them to be coin operated. That's how they say that. That's what their process is. That's how they think. That's what we want them to do. We want them to bring those customers in. We just want them to bring the right customers in, right? And so the better relationship that we have with sales, more likely we are to influence the quality and the quality of the customers and the expectations that are being set.
Yeah, and
right, because when I've been in situations where a salesperson has sold something that was completely wrong, and has thrown it over the fence at us. And that is it, and so because that individual needed to hit their quota, wanted that commission. The problem is an incredibly selfish act, because it not only negatively affects customer success, but it negatively affects the entire organization. So all that extra effort that you have to put in to writing the ship that misinformation has caused to the customer is taking away all of that effort that you could be applying to all those customers that are a good fit, who have had their expectations set correct.
Yeah.
Just so you could, get your commission check.
Yeah.
Andrew, if I can share a best practice to help bridge the gap between sales and customer success, since we're kind of on that tangent, something that we do internally, we call it game tape review. So if anyone's watched The Last Dance series that came out last year on Netflix, it reminds me a lot of that, where we have both the sales and the customer success department get together once a week and we rewatch a gong recording of a sales call, and then we rewatch the onboarding call of that same person, and then we provide feedback from both sides. So sales is providing a perspective to the onboarding team that we're not thinking about, because they're helping us change our verbiage a little bit to be, to your point, Vanessa, keeping sales in our back pocket, right? So maybe we're saying something on the onboarding call that is not reinforcing the sale in the way that it should be, and vice versa. Maybe they're saying something in the sales call that is setting us up for failure in the onboarding call. And so we've been really able to chip away at that over multiple, we do this once a week, every single week. It's one of those non-negotiable calls. And it's been a really, really cool best practice to get perspectives that we don't even have. I'm not a salesperson, so I don't know what they're thinking.
That's incredible. I think I had this visual of my ego has to get out of the way. I have to be really open.
It's a really humbling experience when you have your recording on blast in front of 20 people. I tell you, the first time that we watched one of my onboarding calls, I was really nervous, but it was really humbling, because in my head, I'm going through a script and then adding in certain components that are personalized. And I didn't realize that maybe I was saying something with an inflection of a tone that wasn't building proper rapport. That's how granular we're getting when we do these calls. So I would encourage everyone to implement that stat if they're not doing it.
That's a great idea. I love the ego comment, Wendy. I think in this role, in customer success, you need to be able and willing to check your ego at the door. Period. Whether it's dealing with customers, whether it's dealing internally, check the ego. You got to put that ego aside. Cool. Thank you, Wendy. If you could click done on that.
Oh, sure.
Thanks, Emily, for the question. Once again, we are planning on going until 15 past the hour, so we'll take more questions if you have them. Otherwise, we'll wrap up if we have no more questions. But looks like Gala is going to jump into this one. Vic asks, glad to hear Toby getting a shout out. Tobias getting a shout out. Got it. What do you recommend when you that's the love of your life, I believe, right? That's what I've got written down. Does your husband know that, though? What do you recommend when you raise concerns and fold in recommendations, but they still fall on deaf ears?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a CSM, you're kind of the receptacle of getting those concerns from both the customer and maybe even internal teams, product marketing. So you're the intermediary. You're always that gatekeeper between the two. And I think it's important that when you present those concerns to the appropriate parties, that you are using that with them mindset. What's in it for them? So when I tell this person that feature that they rolled out did not accomplish what marketing thought it was going to accomplish, but from the customer's perspective, it was a massive fail. You can't say that, right? You're not going to go to product and say that was a massive fail, but using, the what's in it for them mindset of when I present this to marketing, this is going to be something that's going to be perceived as negative. So how can I get their buy-in to make them realize that we're in this together and we're trying to work on behalf of the customer? So I think in situations where it might fall on deaf ears, the work hasn't been done to develop those relationships so that you can deliver that feedback and it not be perceived in a negative way.
Love that. Actually, Wendy, you had an idea that you sent us via email about this notion of people being more comfortable saying no than yes.
Oh, yes.
You want to walk through that, because I think it's going to be relevant as well to this.
Yeah, and I before I get into that, I do want to say I'm not an expert. I'm an enthusiastic practitioner.
Yeah.
So just I
Okay.
want to make sure everyone is like aware that this is all this cross-functional best practices. It's all a journey.
Yeah.
It's all a journey. And I learned this get people to say no trick. Oh gosh, maybe 3 months ago, and I've been around the block for a while. People are more comfortable saying no. Period. Hey, Vanessa, you want to go out Saturday night?
I would say
yeah. Okay. but so if you can flip it, can flip it, like, hey, instead of saying, hey, can you, contact this customer to fix this issue, you could say, hey, Vanessa, would you be opposed to partnering with me on getting the customer from A to B because of this situation? Would you be opposed to that? No, not opposed to that. I love partnering with you. We have a good relationship because we did our coffee chats and about my, what I did for vacation, and we have that relationship. But get them to say no, and then to move the ball forward. It's a flip.
Yeah.
If I can think of another one, I'll drop it in. But I love using this trick.
That was interesting.
I like that. All right. Well, we got no more questions, so I guess we'll end things early. So we're at the end of the webinar. I think it went well, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn, tagging either myself or Success Coaching or any of my fantastic guests. I want to thank you for spending the time with us and for the ideas, the thoughts, the insights, and the best practices that you shared. One final note, great CSMs know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. And that's why we created the CSM Mastermind, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So like I said, we hope you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on August 18th, when we'll discuss the art of success discovery, how to unearth the goals, the pain points, the definitions of success that you as CSMs need in order to understand and help your customers achieve their desired outcomes. Until we see you again, have a great rest of your day, week, and month. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Thank you, guys.